Hey guys, I hope you're doing well. So today I would like to paint a watercolor. It's a cityscape watercolor of the skyline of New York. So on the left you saw the first try I made, and this is on the right, the drawing that I will be doing step by step together with you today. So I have started by doing a little sketch with my pencil. And now what I'm doing is that I'm simply drawing on the top of it with an ink pen, which is very handy. It comes very handy for all sorts of urban sketches. It gives a little bit more detail. So this one is an easy one. It's really very suitable for beginners, as you can't go wrong with the skyline, because even if some of the buildings are too tall or too short or whatever, it doesn't really matter. Nobody's going to check that. So as long as you're happy with your drawing, that's absolutely fine. So that's why I'm doing really kind of a rough sketch of the skyline. So on the back we have these skyscrapers and some older New York style buildings. So the taller ones are going to be all glazed, and then the older ones are going to be like masonry buildings with some windows on them. And right on the bottom there will be a line of vegetation, which is also suggested on my pencil drawing. So later on you will see me draw these and paint them using watercolor, but basically the painting will be done in like 3 steps. First I will do the sky and the water using wet on wet technique, and then once that is dry I will paint the skyline, and then when all of it is dry I will add a little bit of detail, a little bit of colors and shadows. So there we go, I'm almost done with this line drawing. So I will use my ink pen for the skyline on the right, which is closer to us, but then on the left you can see that I have sketched it with a pencil and I did not draw it with the ink pen, because actually these buildings are further away, so I will give them a little bit less detail, and I did not want to have like lines on them, so that's why I just left them with the pencil sketch. So I will use first my flat brush to wet the sky and the water. So there's one thing you need to know about my paper. This paper is really not so suitable for wet on wet paintings because it dries extremely quick. So you will see that by the time I've wet my water on the bottom of the page, well, the top was dry already, so I need to go another hand on top of it, and that's not ideal, but here we go, I just had to do it. So that's my second go, and I really need to go fast because it's drying so fast. And now I will use my round brush and I will mix some blue with 2 shades of blue and some brown to have like different shades of blue and gray and even purple a little bit, with a little bit of red later on. And I will just go on top of the yellow. I will not worry too much if the color looks too saturated, because actually when it dries it tends to desaturate, so really you can go on top of it. But what you need to avoid, if your paper is like mine, you need to avoid those little puddles of water. As you can see, the purple one, that's a puddle that's not going to dry very nicely, so later on I will have to remove some of the water. But I will just first do my my water on the bottom, because I'm afraid that it's gonna dry. So I will first do my water and then I will remove the puddle of water. So you can see that because I wanted to desaturate gradually as we come to the front, I just held my round brush very late on the paper, and so this is a nice way to make a graduation. And then I will add some little different shades of blue and purple so that the water reflects the clouds in the sky. Okay, and do not hesitate to go on top of the buildings as well, because these are glazed buildings, so they reflect the clouds and the sky. So it's completely appropriate to have the exact same shades of blue and purple and gray. So that's what I'm gonna do on some of the buildings. And then, as I mentioned early on, the smaller buildings, they are mostly masonry buildings, so they are going to be brownish, but I will do also the ones on the back with a shade of gray, blue-gray, similar to the darkest one on the sky. And for now, probably the best thing I can do is just to let it dry. But I just want to draw your attention to the fact that now my purples and blues are much less saturated as they seemed at the beginning. So that's why you shouldn't worry too much if the colors look a little bit too saturated. So now the entire painting is dry, and so I will prepare some different shades of blue to paint my skyscrapers. So basically I will use different shades, and some are going to be greener, some are going to be more like purple, some are going to be darker, and some are going to be lighter. And again, I do not worry too much about what the reality of the cityscape is, because nobody is ever going to watch at the same time, to look at the same time at my painting and at the cityscape I was getting inspired of. So if it is similar, obviously, but it doesn't have to be exactly the same. Sometimes when we try to make a painting very detailed and exactly the same as what we see, well, we get lost in the details, and it turns out not so good. So sometimes it's very important to be able to simplify what we see and just draw whatever we feel is important and whatever we think is going to give the feeling of the cityscape we are getting inspired of. All right, so I'm almost done with my buildings. I will just add a few darker buildings. These are going to be smaller buildings, and they can be darker because simply they have a different shade of glazing, or they can be darker because a taller building is projecting a shadow on them, or part of the building is lighted by the sun and then the other part is in a shadow, as it is the case for this tall one, which I wanted to give a little bit more detail because it's like a main point of the cityscape. I will give a little bit of detail on some of them, so I'm suggesting like different stories and levels on this one. And now I'm mixing like a green color, which I'm going to use to paint the vegetation on the front, on the waterfront. So what I'm going to do is that I'm just going to pay attention to not to paint like a continuous line. So I will try to sometimes draw a short line and then just touch the paper with my brush, and just so that it's not continuous one. And now I will use this tiny little brush that comes with my watercolor set, and I will give a little bit more detail on the buildings with a saturated blue-gray, quite dark, because my buildings are dry already. As I said, this paper dries extremely fast. And then as well, I will give a little bit more detail on the vegetation. So what kind of detail do I want to give to the vegetation? Well, I will mix a little bit of a different shade of green, maybe a cooler one with a little bit more blue in it, and I will give some shadows at the bottom of the trees. And then you will see that there will be some shadows reflected on the water. So we will need to do some shadows reflecting the buildings, and also shadows reflecting the trees. All right. But first I'm going to do some projected shadows from the buildings on top of each other, which didn't turn out so well. Maybe I should not have done it, but anyways, I did it anyways, so that's it. Okay. Trying to suggest some windows on some of those buildings. And now I'm going to do these shadows at the bottom of the trees. Again, you need to be careful not to make a continuous line, because we have many different trees. So I will try to leave some white as well between the trees, and give a little bit of darker green at the bottom. Okay, there we go, almost there. And now, once I'm happy with my trees, I will be able to go and build a little bit of shadows and detail on the water. As I said, reflect the buildings, reflect the vegetation. I think the trees are coming out nicely. We're almost there. Need to be careful not to put too much shadow on it, because then the light green wouldn't be visible anymore. So I need to stop before it's too late. Okay, so a little bit of detail on the water. It's like those little waves. It's mostly still water, but yet. I'll try to give a little shadow at the background skyline as well. It will reflect on the water as well. And it gives like a nice edge, so that you can see that it is not the same surface. One is horizontal and the other one is vertical, isn't it? And then I'll give some projected shadows from the buildings and the vegetation. And then the last step is going to be to give some yellow color on this boat. It's a ferry, and what I like about New York ferries is that they are yellow. And so when the sky is cloudy, and it often is in New York, well, this yellow ferry is going to pop out from this gray water and gray sky, and then all of a sudden we have this yellow ferry. It's really beautiful. You will see it will make the drawing pop up. It's much nicer after that. So I'll just give it a yellow shade first, and then a little bit of very dark gray for the windows, and some shadow on the water. And so we're almost there. If you like this step-by-step tutorial, please let me know in the comments, and do not forget to subscribe to the channel as well. Thanks for watching.